Okay, now that the recording's going, right, I think it is now. Okay, now that the recording's going, I just want to say hi. I'm Angelo Perrino. I'm a course director in the DCVS. I teach a lot of online courses. My background is I went to University of Tampa here in Florida, and then I went to NYU has a campus in Singapore. So I actually got my master's degree in Singapore. I have directed and produced every single type of media you can think of, from short films to corporate videos, government videos, music videos, feature films. I've worked every position you can have on a film set, I think. I don't think there's one position I haven't done. My main focus has always been directing, producing, and cinematography. And that's enough about me. We're here to talk about Jeff, our good friend that's visiting us and giving us his time. Do you want to tell him about yourself, Jeff?
Sure. My name is Jeff Osborne. I also went to the University of Tampa School of Communications, where I studied film there. After that, I just started freelancing in Florida, starting with just a few local music video artists and small businesses, and just got bigger and better clients along the way, so to speak. And I now run two separate, just really small production companies. And yeah, I'm also involved in everything from film to commercial, and everything in between, corporate videos, etc. So that's what I'm involved with right now.
Do you want to tell them the names of your two production companies?
Sure. It's Reagent Productions and Blue Reel Creative. I just sort of separated the companies to focus on different aspects of production I do. Sort of my ultimate goal is to get into strictly narrative, aka movies and television. But along the way, the commercial work is really what pays the bills. I'm involved in lots of film projects, but a lot of the indie projects don't necessarily have tons of money of them. So I use that to sort of offset those two different passions. So.
Sorry, Jeff, I think you froze. All I heard was along the way, and then after that it stopped.
Oh, sure. So I believe the original question was the two companies. So I have Reagent Productions and Blue Reel Creative, which I just created as separate entities, really just for this type of videos that they are and the clientele associated with those. One is more focused on cause marketing. The other is more on corporate commercial and product-based commercial. And within my second company, there's actually sort of two divisions: Reagent Productions, Reagent Films, and then Reagent Films deals strictly with narrative, aka films and television, which is what my ultimate passion in staying strictly in narrative work is.
Okay. A lot of the students want to know about like getting their first job, getting their foot in the door, how to a lot of them want to start their own LLCs like you did as well. So for the start, I want to ask questions that involve your beginnings.
Sure.
You mentioned that you started with music videos. Can you talk a little bit about how you found your first clients, and then from there, how did you progress? Did you keep investing in your own equipment, or like where did you use your money so that you could eventually start your LLC and then push that into moving to LA?
Absolutely. Okay, yeah. So, going back to the beginning here. Some of the first clients I got, I was actually still enrolled as a student, and because we had access to what was called our film cage, where we had free access to lights, cameras, whatever we want for projects, I used that as an opportunity to make some music videos for local artists, in exchange for, I mean, you're talking, it was probably $500 at the time, something like that. So yeah, I honestly forget how I even put myself out there to the local artist. I think it might have just been a random happenstance at a bar or something, where I met an artist and said, "Oh, I'm enrolled in communications," and one thing led to another. So, in short, I actually used the school's lights and equipment as part of my own student projects to sort of double as a way of building out my portfolio, meeting new clients in the area, etc. And then eventually down the line, I think, I had first, I think I was still using my computer from school, which oddly enough, I was using Premiere before a bunch of people started using it. It was a much more sort of I don't know, tangential type editing program before it became more popular. I ended up moving up to over to Final Cut and then back to Premiere. But all that to be said, I was still using my school computer at the time for a couple years after the fact. I think the first investment I made was an HVX 200, which was the first camera of its time that could film in slow motion, which was great for music
First
videos.
digital?
What's that?
Were you saying first digital camera of its time?
Yes, yeah. So it was it was the first camera that would allow you to film in 60 frames per second, played back at 24, which at the time was an amazing feature that small time videographers didn't have the opportunity of getting. So that was my first investment. I think after that, I invested in a MacBook Pro and Final Cut and things like that. And to be honest, it was a struggle. I mean, you're talking over the span of, I think, probably 2, 3, 4 years it took me to be able to get, my first camera, first computer, some of the associated software. Because, I was just freelancing, as a local videographer, willing to do basically anything for money I could get, just to start out. And it's interesting how it's, to this day, even I've been doing this over 15 years. I don't think, I have websites up just for the formality. And I think it's always good when I have a referral, have an easy point of contact. But, everything has been based off of relationships, down to, some of those first videos I'd ever started, even to, old friends who knew that, I was involved in videography and reached out. Very rarely did I ever get anyone cold calling me from, someone seeing my website on Google and wanting to work with me. So I think everything, at least in my experience, has been very relationship based. I would say for anyone, I think it's very important as far as building relationships for other people who are involved in the space, whether, you're trying to get involved in commercial or narrative work. I don't know is that enough? I mean, I could keep
Oh,
going.
that's great. It's
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you. So you said a couple things that I wanted to ask you a little bit more about. So you said you use school equipment. So because I tell this to my students all the time, I'm not giving you homework. These are your portfolio pieces. This is your time now to get mistakes out of the way, but to also make the sharpest thing you can using the school equipment and all of your teachers as hopefully mentors and being able to give you guys advice on how to do things stronger. Would you say like your school time is very important? Like if building up your portfolio during this time period would really help them?
Absolutely. I don't think I could stress that enough. I mean, your portfolio is very important. I mean, that's essentially a major aspect of your resume. I mean, in my experience, any clients I get, they want to see my work and see what I can do and how that work might help them. So yeah, building my portfolio as a student was something, I'm happy I did. Well, I'd put it that way, because that's how I was able to get my first clients. And, while you have those resources, use them, because once you're not at school and you don't have access to this equipment, it's expensive stuff, even if you're renting it. I mean, as a matter of fact, there was even less at our time available. I mean, now there's a few things called like Share Grid and Kit Split, which I suggest everyone check out, as far as it's sort of like peer-to-peer equipment rental. But again, that's not to say I don't want to stress enough that while you have these resources and time and availability to sort of double any projects you're working on as something to build your portfolio, absolutely do it, because otherwise you're going to be left trying to build your portfolio by using your own financial means and times when, you'll have to be paying bills at the same time as well. Not to say that you don't have to pay bills now, but having those resources at your disposal, is definitely something I would recommend doing.
And just so you know, a lot of the students here are in the online program, so they actually get like a little launch box package. It's part of what they pay for to go to the school, so they get to keep some of the gear. But
oh, great. Okay.
But having the teachers here, being able to get feedback, being
exactly.
able to work on things, that's still very valuable. The other thing I would say that maybe we don't talk about enough is once you're out of school and you're trying to get the work, I found it hard to create stuff while I was trying to also job hunt at the same time. So that's another like little extra bit of stress you might not be anticipating, is the fact that the more you get now, the less stressful it will be when you're in the job market, which is competitive and hard, especially since all of you are from all around the country. Some of you are in other countries. So the markets can be a lot more competitive depending on where you are. Do you remember,
absolutely.
Jeff, what what did you have a goal? Because you knew you wanted to move to LA, right? So you knew that was something you were saving up for. Can you talk to them all about like it's daunting, like needing to save up a certain amount of money, how you decided what that should be, like what your plans were when you moved to LA? Because
Absolutely.
you had set up a whole kind of like contingency.
Absolutely. So, as I'd mentioned before, narrative is still my ultimate goal, and moving to LA was also a goal of mine since I was very young, probably the same time I, went to school. And, everyone's experience is different, but, I had other friends who'd moved out there and hadn't found immediate success, and they were sort of discouraged by that. And I forget the exact conversations, but I would say that the general sentiment or my takeaway at the time was, I need to build up my portfolio and really have something that's going to separate me from all the other people who want to move out to LA and don't really have anything in the resume to show. So, from a creative standpoint, I really wanted to have done a feature credit that I could talk about and point to on IMDb, because that sort of changes the conversation with people out here versus saying, oh, I'm an aspiring this, I'm an aspiring that. I don't really have anything to show for it yet, but it's what I want to do. Oftentimes those you won't get a call back, basically. So.
Well, you'll hear that from every PA on every set. This is what I want to do. But those are your opportunities to network and show them what you've done, right?
Exactly.
To have your portfolio ready.
Exactly.
Sorry,
So
I interrupted you.
No worries at all. So, I mean, yeah, from the creative end, I definitely wanted to have something that I think would sort of, I guess, hold water in a conversation about wanting to do more features. And then, the second, of course, was from the financial aspect, giving myself, saving up enough, to move the cost of the move in general, assuming that once I get there, I'm going to still have to be looking for more freelance business, and that's going to take a little bit of time to network and all these things. So I think there is a good amount of preparation involved. I mean, granted, you could also people could take a much different approach and apply for a job in LA that then that's the reason they move, and they already have that job and it's already in the industry. So again, I only speak on my experience, and I think there's lots of different ways to do it, but one way or another, have a plan if those are your types of ambitions.
Since you brought up having a job ahead of time, that's actually a great method. Like if you apply to a production house or a rental house, or even, all the big companies have offices where you can have a full-time job and be networking at the same time. One thing I ran into, just to give you guys a little heads up, and this was 10 years ago, so it might not still be happening, but I had people in New York go, hey, as soon as you move here, we'll find you work. I had people in LA go, as soon as you move here, we'll find you work. So like they were just not willing to bite the final bullet. They weren't really willing to commit or sign contracts. I had to show them that I was willing to move there. And then I did get that work. So that's another thing you might run into if you're trying to find a job before you move there. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you guys. Just a little bit more about your plan, Jeff. Did you save for what you thought you would need for a year, or 6 months or 3 months? Like how much ahead were you planning? How much?
I think I'd planned about 6 months ahead, because I was still freelancing remotely at the time, enough that I knew that I would have at least a little bit of recurring business, that my move wouldn't affect that. But I at least had 6 months or more from what I can recall. And that's after being able to cover all the moving expenses, a security deposit, like new stuff. I came with a little bit of furniture, but I knew, there's anytime you move, there's a little bit of that stuff involved. And then, yeah, as far as the feature work, interestingly enough, again, this goes back to the relationships thing, that the actor that I'd used in one of my school thesis films, she was also pursuing a career in acting, and was able to secure funds for a feature in which she asked me to DP because of that thesis project I did in school. So, this goes back to building your portfolio and building those relationships, because, it was those specific things which actually led me to doing my first feature, and positioning me to be able to move out here. So
I just want to make sure everyone heard you perfectly clear. You did a short film in your film school with an actress who remembered how professional and good you were, and she recommended you to DP a feature film that her husband was producing, right?
yep,
Okay.
exactly.
So your networking starts now. You never know where it's going to come from. All of you guys should be messaging each other, and like making sure you have everyone's email address, find out where people live. I think Randy Baker has a Facebook group for all of you. That's a really good place for you guys to be networking. So, help each other out. And even if right now the most you can help them is just like encouragement, even just saying nice things, or like good luck on your shoot or whatever it is, people remember that stuff, and then they want to like be around those positive and helpful and encouraging people when their opportunities appear, right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
And you don't have to agree with me. I just keep going, right, Jeff? But
No, absolutely. I definitely agree. And I mean, I think that, definitely be conscious as well of the types of relationships. Like, for example, because I made my start doing music videos and small business, commercials for small businesses, as the same thing, if other people are growing in one shape, way, or form, tie to whether it be advertising or narrative work that you're doing, that to this day has continued to provide me even more work. For example, someone had a startup that was another college friend of mine had a startup, that I was just filming his ads for a couple $100, maybe $1,000, that they would go on Facebook and this and that. Next thing you know, they went on Shark Tank. Their business, grew times 10 and got much bigger. And that's another client. I even had.
Was this the same client that hired you for your political ads, or a different?
No, this is another one actually. And
Okay.
that other friend, I mean, he is a producer and a strategist at a very large commercial agency. And he had known just through high school that I'd worked on the high school news show, and we kept in touch. And, he was like, send me something that you got, that's recently. And that's led to probably one of my most lucrative commercial ongoing contracts that I have today. So,
you haven't told them about that. Do you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I have another friend that I went to high school with, who's involved in cause marketing and politics and things like that, and he sort of started out at the bottom as well, but we sort of continued to grow little by little over the years, and eventually he ended up working on bigger and bigger races, Senate and congressional, all the way to presidential. So during 2020, I was doing national TV ads for an entity that was spending more than Coke and McDonald's in Q3 2020. So, the relationships are important, and definitely people who are tied in one way or another, whether that be an actor or, writers, small business owners who are going to need marketing content, things like that, where you definitely want to be making connections, depending on what your aspirations are, whether that be commercial or narrative. I sort of do it all again, because, commercial still pays the bulk of the bills, because I'm sort of using that as leverage to get, into higher echelon narrative work. So.
And when you say commercials build the bulk of your work, when you say that the commercials are the bulk of your bread and butter, do you want to explain that to them a little? Just that it's like a bigger market, that the clients pay more.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, in commercial, there's a lot of money in advertising, and advertising is growing. I'm not going to say that's necessarily a good thing, but it's a thing regardless. And that's in every, of course, with Facebook and Instagram and all this, marketing is exploding. for example, even, when I began in, I don't know, early 2000s, the amount of spend in advertising between TV and digital was like TV is way up here, digital down here. And it's basically, I mean, the lines have basically crossed and digital is now outpacing television. So I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyways, there's just
a lot
much
of money in advertising.
Yeah, there's tons of money, and it is growing and growing and growing, and there is an increasing demand for that. If that's what you want to do, great. If narrative is what you want to do, I'll say that there's lots of ways to get into narrative. I can only speak on my own experience, but among the movies that land on page 1 of Netflix when you open it, there's 1,000 other movies that you've never heard of. Those are the types of movies that I'm working on now, and it's a long road to get to the big studio films. But if it's a road you want to take, I mean, it's definitely worth doing it. It's definitely a journey. It's just not the same in commercial, because everything in narrative is tied to distribution. And unless you're working through the studio path where there's distribution already in place, then it's really luck of the draw, where it's just small investors taking a risk and making a movie and seeing if they can get lucky and sell it to a distributor. But there's no guarantee that it's going to get distributed. The chances of you ever making residual income off of it are probably less than 1%. I've never seen residual income off of a movie I've ever made.
Can we make sure we clarify what residual income means for them?
Sure. That's so when you're above the line in a film, meaning you have a piece of equity in the project, above the line and below the line just means you come in and make weekly or monthly income, and that's it. If you're above the line, that means you actually own equity in the movie. And if the movie ends up making $100 million, then you make residual income on the back end on top of whatever your upfront fees were to do the work.
I realized while you were talking that we forgot to mention one of the biggest networking things, networking connections that you have is me. No, so Jeff and I went to University of Tampa. We always got along, but we were in different circles. But we knew about each other and we got along. And I moved to Singapore and he moved to LA. But when I came back to America, I produced a ton of stuff for Jeff when I got to LA, and we worked together a lot. And now I've got him on here. So I would have never guessed that when I was 22 and I met Jeff, who was 18, and we were in completely different circles, but in the same program together, that we would become such good friends much later on and do a ton of projects together. We produced,
Exactly.
You directed and shot a web series that I wrote and produced. And then Jeff, whenever he got his commercial gigs, I would help produce the shoots as well and I would AD and produce.
Exactly.
And that was always fun, and that was great. And that was such a fun experience to come back to America and get to like rekindle this connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that just goes to show, I mean, it's all about those relationships that start early on, and they may develop into other relationships, but it's like, again, I think I know every single project I'm working on right now is due to relationships early on, where I met this other person because of another person, and it's just a chain reaction of events that go from there. It's really, I guess, not really until you reach the very, very top, when you become a household name, that outsiders that you've never even heard or networked before really want to start working with you. Because everything before that is all just relationship based.
And you mentioned that you never really got cold calls from your portfolio, but I want to clear up a little that he might not have gotten strangers, but when job opportunities appeared, when people were like, "Oh, we heard about you," or "We're thinking about you. Do you have anything to show us?" He still had his website and videos ready to go. So it might not have been from out in the ether, but he still had a professional like website and reel and documents to show people, so that when they look, they were like, "Oh, he's got his stuff together."
Exactly. And I think that is an important distinction to make, is that exactly like Angelo said, I think it's still important to have you know, a website, because it's essentially your portfolio is basically just like an advanced version of your business card. And people want a quick and easy way to see, hey, what have you done? You know, it's even like when you have to pull up Dropbox and go through a list and be like, whoa, wait, let me show you. It's like, it's less of a streamlined process. Just go to my website. You know, you want to make it as easy and simple for as possible for people to see your work, and how you showcase it is very important for sure.
Speaking of that Dropbox though, I have gotten work from having it ready, not making
Oh,
people
absolutely.
scan
And
it there,
yes,
but having it ready on my phone, like on sets, and people going, "Oh, I heard you
right,
got into a film festival," and I'd be like, "Yep, here it is," and show it
right,
to them right away. Here's some headphones, like whatever it took, but like making
exactly,
sure I was ready to go.
absolutely. So
Uh,
yeah, you know, I think one way in shape or form, have your work ready to go, and always have it available and easy to show. Absolutely. And again, I don't want to discourage anyone too. Like, for example, that's not to say I'm only speaking on my experience. You know, you could approach your business in a much different way and put a lot more effort, honestly, than I did, as far as trying to get outside business. Like, if you're someone who's a little bit more web savvy and knows SEO and how to have your website come up first if someone types video production, I don't at all discourage that. So I just want to reiterate that I'm only speaking on my own experience. So when I say things didn't work a certain way for me, I just hope that that's don't take that as that it can't work for you.
Yeah. And I hope everyone understands that Jeff and I both had our own individual experiences with how to get our foots in the door. Um, but it's still good. There's no one answer. We're just telling you a potential path, but there are many paths. There's so many paths. And that's
Exactly.
what also can be part of the problem, is how many paths there are. But if you're hardworking, if you're prepared, whatever path you're taking, as long as you're hardworking and ready to go, people will notice that.
Absolutely. And again, I think it all boils down to what your specific passion is, because I mean, you know, it may be directing now, but there's lots of jobs on sets. And you know, I say that still saying that I want to direct, so I don't blame anyone else that does. But you know, it's a very different path, back to the whole above the line, below the line thing. You know, if you're looking to be a writer, producer, director, any of the above the line positions, that's a very different path, because the only way you can really showcase that is by doing it. You know, unless you get lucky and someone's willing to take a leap of faith. Like, for example, the actress that, you know, had enough faith in me to say, hey, I know you've never DP'd a feature before, but can you DP this? Like, that's lucky. And that's sort of, you know, I forget what that saying is. It's like, luck is a combination of like preparation and whatever that saying is. I'm sure you guys have heard it, but you know, definitely if you want to be above the line, definitely focus on how you can showcase your work as that above the line position. Write short films, direct short films, DP short films, edit short films. Now, if you want to be something, you know, like in a G&E crew, like a gaffer and this, that, and the studio level, like those people make great money as well. Not to say that that's the only reason to do it, but you know, I just mean more so from job security and things like that. So, you know, you can always join a local union and work your way up that way. You know, if you know you want to be a director, you can also work your way up the ladder through the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, because again, the director even has many people below them. There's the first assistant director, there's the second, and a whole crew of directors beneath the director. So you know, lots of different ways you can go about things, but just have a plan one way or the other, to put it.
I see, William, you have a question. Just give us a little more time. We're gonna get through the rest of this, and then we're gonna answer everybody's questions. Okay. Do you want to talk about your writing? You just wrote the Panama Project. Do you want to talk about your experience with that website and how it's helped you?
Sure. So
give me a little more background on what the project is.
Okay, absolutely. So I currently wrote a pilot script about Manuel Noriega, who at one point was the dictator of Panama. I'm actually a dual citizen, an American citizen and a Panamanian citizen. I actually only got my Panamanian citizenship by birthright. I was born in Syracuse, New York. I don't actually even speak Spanish, but my dad is from there, and he is a citizen because of that. All that to say, starting about over 10 years ago now, I found him to be a very interesting character, and I was able to interview him in prison multiple times before he died, as well as many other people in the Panamanian military, things of that nature. So I've done over 10 years of research outlining that entire series. Right now it's slated to be a serial drama, 50 episodes, 5 seasons, 10 episodes per season, 1 hour long drama, political crime thriller. And anyways, long story short, after that 10 years of research, I finished the first draft of that pilot in 2018. I didn't really get it into a sales ready format until early 2021. At that point, I put it on coverfly.com, which is essentially like a, I'm blanking on the name, not Without a Box, but the more
It's like Without a Box, but now it's called
Film Freeway, I think.
Film Freeway, I think. Yeah.
So Coverfly, if you are an aspiring writer, Coverfly is sort of not. And I'll explain what makes it the same and what different. But it's sort of an online portal for writers where you can upload your script and submit them to various competitions. So, for the equivalent in the way that Film Freeway, you can submit to Sundance, Tribeca, TIFF, South by Southwest. It's the same deal with screenwriters as far as trying to get scripts and ideas developed. They have the Academy Nichols competition and many other ones that are pretty renowned screenwriting contests. But what Coverfly does, which is interesting, is it takes all of your cumulative rankings within each of the competitions that you submit to. So say you are a semifinalist in this competition and a finalist in that competition, and so on and so forth. It gives you an overall ranking. So the more competitions you win, the higher it puts you sort of on different lists for agents, producers, studios to look at any new incoming ideas and potentially develop them. So long story short, I wrote that, submitted it to a lot of different competitions, and right now it's currently in the top 1%. And I have been getting bites from producers looking to develop the project. Now, it is a very ambitious project in the sense that it's a period piece. It involves military vehicles, lots of production value, long story short. So they started asking me more detailed questions about, casting and budgeting, in which, to be honest, on the first meeting, I was caught a little bit flat-footed by those questions. So currently what I'm doing now is I hired a line producer and a first AD to actually break down the pilot as if, we already had the money and we're ready to film it, break this down into a day out of days. And how many days can we do this for? And how can we structure this in a way that we can do it between 3 and 5 million, because that's the average going rate for a pilot in development. And their worry is that it was going to be much higher, given there's an invasion in the pilot and many other high production value scenes. But I have a few tricks up my sleeve. I think we could stay in the 3 to 5 million area, but that's sort of where things stand on that.
Can we just go back to the fact that you said 10 years? Like, I want the students to understand that sometimes when you're developing projects, it's not that he he was doing lots of other things. So that's also part of the distraction. He's paying his bills, he's working jobs, he's doing other creative things, but sometimes it's just bread and butter, which is what we call the jobs you do just for money. You're not getting anything out of it, like creatively. And so, but it took you 10 years. And I want you guys to understand that even if this was his own focus, like his only focus, like you had savings and all you worked on, how long do you think it would have taken you, even if you didn't have to worry about other things? It still would have taken you quite a while, right?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And that's, and I'm still only a portion of the way there. I mean, it's still not even officially in development yet, so absolutely. I mean, as Angelo said, if I were doing this straight, it still would have been, I don't even know how many years, but you are correct in the sense that I really look at this as a long-term goal, and it's something that as long as I'm making continuous progress on it, but it's sort of buying myself that time. It goes back to the whole, I was saying that sort of the commercial work sort of subsidizes my creative endeavors, because I actually had to work myself high enough in the commercial world that I would get such good paying jobs that I could actually take a day here, take a day there, take a week there, and take that time to write my scripts and develop those scripts, and do the research and interview people involved. And that's not even getting into the whole development aspect. I mean, it's going to be, even if some showrunner or producer called me today, said, Jeff, you're in development, here's the money, start, it would still be another few years from then, because then it goes into development. We have to write out the rest of the first season. We have to,
and they want real detailed outlines of every season after, right, as well, that not
exactly. And I've already done some of the legwork on that, but again, there's going to be a back and forth as far as, how closely, this hypothetical person would agree with the path that my story takes and the arcs in each season. And, still lots of more detailed research to do episode by episode. I do have a one sheet by episode, but still there would just be lots of more work to do. I mean, everything down from the casting, getting backing from some sort of, big agency like a CAA or William Morris that helps package and cast and things like that. So there's still so many parts of the process that I haven't even gone through yet. That's going to be even more years. And keep in mind, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole in the sense that there's people who I'm sure you've heard of that are waiting to get their projects in development, who have movies and series that you love that they're waiting. It's the same for everyone, even at the highest levels. So it's definitely be prepared for the long games, especially series, because this is sort of the golden age for serial dramas and long form television right now as we go into streaming. And really, like, the whole landscape is changing. There's even things that I'm having to be in the process of relearning, because 10 years ago everyone was still going off after the theatrical model for how you make residual income on features. Now that's completely changing, because everything is going, unless you're a big tent pole IP type movie, or you've won an Academy Award for Best Picture, chances are you're not going theatrical. And a lot of these streaming platforms, they're keeping their numbers hidden, whereas in the box office, that all used to be an open thing in which you could negotiate your career based on the success of that. Whereas, we'll see where this heads, but there might be a lot more smoke and mirrors, because Netflix and HBO don't want to reveal all their numbers. So how do you negotiate your success if you don't really know how many people watched your movie on Netflix? So, the landscape is continuing to change, and I'm still trying to keep up with this evolving landscape before us. So
thank you so much, Jeff. I don't mean thank you as in we're over, but that was a great answer. Sometimes you say vocab words I'm not sure every student knows, so can you tell them
I'm sorry.
can you tell them what a one sheet is?
Sure. So a one sheet is essentially just a one-page summary of anything, whether that be a movie, a series. It's generally just a very simple pitch that outlines exactly what the idea is in the most entertaining and short way. I don't know if you guys have heard the term elevator pitch, but anything you pitch, you want it to be short and sweet, especially with the short attention spans in this day and age of social media. You don't want to spend 30 minutes pitching your idea. They'll not be interested by 30 seconds in, likely. So, this kind of goes with the whole portfolio thing. If you're looking to develop projects, you have to put just as much effort into the pitch of the product as you do as the actual script. And this is something that I've even grappled with. I've had people like my script but say, like, my pitch is horrible and I need to work on it. And I had to work on it some more. So it's, if you're trying to push ideas, unfortunately, you do have to wear the sales hat for a little bit, and you have to sell your story and your idea. And why is it going to be something new that someone's going to want to invest in, especially being, a creator that's, like myself, relatively unknown, that they would be taking a risk on me you know, to sort of helm the creative on that production. So
Would you say you're selling yourself too? So you got to make sure you're
absolutely,
look professional, speak professional, all your
absolutely.
materials are super polished. Jeff is really good at polishing his materials. Like his pitches all have graphics, they all look perfect. What's the you use what Adobe Creative
I
platform?
use, I mean, for a lot of my pitch decks, I use like Photoshop, and then I just convert it. I keep everything as a vector, so the file size doesn't get humongous, or at least as much as I can, because images you can't really vectorize. But yeah, I mean, to put it in simple terms, like pitches, think of it just like anything else, like a news article or anything you see on social media. Like, think about what drives engagement and people staying interested. Like on a pitch deck, you want words and fun, and you don't want it to be some long-winded document. When they open it, it looks like an encyclopedia. They're gonna be like, oh, like, I don't want to read all this. You know, like keep it short and concise, like 3-sentence summary with a photo that sort of encompasses, or even like, I'll even go so far as design cover art, like sort of like a fake poster, even though the, you know, the project hasn't really been done, something that gives them a visual, you know, don't make them have to use their imagination, show them, and make it as easy and short and sweet as possible as you can. So yeah, I mean, that's why a lot goes into my pitch decks and pitches, because yeah, I mean, people will lose interest at the smallest thing, and they'll lose interest if it looks hard to follow and just like a lot to read. And so short and sweet and entertaining, and you're selling yourself and your ideas equally, because, you know, it's even probably even more so, you know, you as the creator than it is the idea. But I would say it's at the very least equal. But
So I mean, we talked about the 10 years, but can we also talk about the hours you spent editing your commercials and all your other projects? Like, I want the students to understand that when you first started and you were hustling, like how many hours a day you were spending in front of your computer.
I would still, I'm even in the hustle right now, but you know, I don't necessarily, you know, I'm only speaking on experience. I don't necessarily recommend this or say this is the way that has to be done, but you know, on average, I mean, I'll probably push 10-12 hour days, 6 days a week, 7 days a week. But you know, that's my choice as a freelancer and a small business owner. I think that there's lots of avenues you can take. You can get a job and work up that way. But regardless, I mean, this is a competitive field and it's going to be hard work. And, you know, again, it all depends on what position and aspirations you have. But in my experience, I'm constantly working. I mean, I don't like at this point, especially now with like remote work, the lines have blurred so much that I really don't even see, you know, the difference. Even when I go to the movies, I'm still working because I'm thinking about all that went into that film, for example. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it's 60-70 hour weeks. You know, I'm going to be working this weekend. I'm going to be stressing out about multiple deadlines I have to meet for multiple different clients. I overbooked myself. It's something I have to work on, you know, but you know, it's another one of those struggles where when you've been when you've struggled to get work for so long, it's very hard to turn down work. And, you know, only in the past few years have I actually reached that sort of crossroads where it's like, wow, I might have to turn this down. Like, and it almost seems like it's like bad luck, like I'm, you know, like jinxing myself or something. But you will reach that point at some point in time where, you know, you actually have a little bit more choice over the quality of work and the projects you want to do. And if you're in a good enough financial position, you can hold off on certain projects to wait for the right thing rather than just taking whatever comes your way because you need the money. But all that to say, it's a constant dance and struggle, even for me to this day. When I get off this call, I probably have 4 more hours of work. So, you know, and I still have to get up early tomorrow. So it's a lot of work. But
yeah, it's gonna be suffering. God will help you. God will help you, sir. God is your strength.
Thank
God
you,
is your
Deborah.
strength.
What was that? I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
I think she said God is your strength. I think that's what I heard.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome, Mike. And I thought, those who had hard me, bro. Those who suffering, it's like.
Yeah, it is. It is absolute. It's, you know, it's a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty. But again, that's again more so in the freelance route. You know, if again, if you want to, you know, work up in staff positions, that might be a very different path. But the freelance world is definitely it's something you get used to, but it's never, you're never comfortable, I guess.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I did freelance for a long time, over 10 years. And as soon as I started like working for steady clients and having like full-time positions, I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? It's not always an option. It wasn't an option for me right at the start. But if you guys look out for like full-time jobs that have benefits that you don't have to worry about finding a new job the next month because it's freelance, like I would definitely recommend that. It's a great place to start if you can. Jeff, I wanted to ask you about deliverables because you were telling me about you have a Hulu short film that you're helping with. Can you maybe tell them a little bit about the Hulu short film, but then also really, I want to stress the deliverables because I teach the editing class. And so when students turn in their rough cuts and like they also turn in their production Bibles and everything that they're supposed to do in the right order, I just want to emphasize once they hear it from you, how important this is.
Absolutely. So at the outset, so this is for, it's a special called Bite Size Halloween. So you could actually see it on Hulu if you're a Hulu subscriber for Halloween. But every year they take
already, or it's coming out.
It's coming out. It'll be out in October.
Okay.
So every year they take on, I believe it's 10 shorts. And I've been a part of the deliverable process before because I've been a post supervisor. And also an editor that was sort of serving as a post supervisor because it was such a small budget, they didn't really have one. But anyways, yes, like for example, the studios are very, very strict. For example, we had to send dailies on a hard drive overnight right after we filmed it. And then we had last Wednesday, we had to deliver a rough cut with an overall time code of the cut, but then also in the other corner, because they had all the raw footage, because we had to ship them all the dailies right away, put in the bottom corner what the time code and label of the footage was for each clip we were using. That way they had a reference where they're like, oh, you know, we don't like that take. They would have a clear reference as far as what take we had used and how we could swap it out, and etc. So, and that's just what's today? I don't even know. Wednesday, we did the director's cut, in which we had to do lots of other deliverables attached to that. We had to have our logo both in black and white as an alpha, as a PSD, an Illustrator, and an EPS ready to go. We needed to have behind the scenes stills and many other sort of like tangential peripheral deliverables. And then the major deliverables are obviously going to be for what goes on Hulu. And those are very detailed because you need to give them both textless and texted versions because if it goes to certain regions, they need to be able to strip away all the titles and put it in that different language. You also have to deliver the audio in both 5:1 mix and a stereo mix.
Didn't you also have to have the audio separate for dubbing?
Yes,
as well?
And then you also have to have the different stems for dialogue, music, and effects, because if it's going to be in another language, they need to strip out the dialogue track and dub it, and have voice actors from any given country of whatever territories they showcase at it to dub all that in. So it is a long, complicated list of deliverables that are very particular, and these are on tight deadlines and short budgets, or I shouldn't say short budgets, but the budgets don't necessarily have a lot of contingency to have lots of errors in them. Learning those deliverables and learning how to be very particular about those deliverables is absolutely important. And even on the commercial end, it's the same thing, especially because we'll have TV ads that also air on digital in different aspect ratios. So I'll have to edit an ad, in 16:9 or even scope And from there, I have to reformat it for 1x1 and now even vertical because there's TikTok, which again is very complicated given the shot composition. And you still have to figure out how to make it work for vertical and square, even if the shot wasn't filmed in a way that was conducive to that. And that's on top of, then you need to have closed captioning files that go along with it. So learning what CRT files are, and Adobe's actually making it easier and will auto detect certain things. So technology is catching up to make it a little bit easier as well. But it is very technical and very involved if you're going to be involved in post to understand those deliverables. So
and if I remember correctly, didn't you also say beyond that, Hulu even wanted like the 4K version, the 1280 version, did they want like different resolutions as well? Correctly.
I don't know if they needed different resolutions. I believe all of the only specification on the visual end was a textless version, and then a version with text, and then the text as a separate alpha layer that they can, layer on. I don't think there was any different resolutions.
Okay.
Because but that's because they did mention that they're doing the aspect ratio changes on theirs, because I guess maybe on Hulu Mobile, I'm actually don't even know how that all works, but they had mentioned on the post-production call that they actually reformat it for different aspect ratios in-house, which sort of implies that maybe if you're on Hulu Mobile, you'll see it in a different aspect ratio. I'm not sure, but yeah.
So how important would you say following those instructions are? How's it going to look if you suddenly turn in the wrong thing or don't pay attention to something they ask for?
It's on the narrative end, it would quickly become a money, in any instance, it's going to become a timeline issue, because when you're dealing with a 2-hour movie and you don't get the right deliverables, I mean, there's a company that has to go through and watch all that stuff down and, QC quality check it all on almost like a forensic level for, is there any audio interference or weird glitches or interference noises? Does all of the video stay within broadcast standards? And, when you're talking about a deliverable that's 2 hours long and a company needs to go in and QC all that stuff, and then they find a mistake, you have to pay that company to do that. So if there's a mistake, and then you say,
quality control, by the way.
Right. So, if you say, oh, sorry, messed that up, and then you redo it, you have to pay that company to go through and review it all again. So you get the idea. Pretty soon you're wasting a bunch of time and a bunch of money, and someone somewhere along the way is going to be like, hey, what's the deal here? Even more so on the commercial end. Commercial ends, at least in the types of commercials that I do, work on a very, very fast timeline, and they're already expecting to ship the ad before they say, hey, we need the final deliverables for this. There's almost an understanding that you're going to get it right. I mean, things always get flagged here and there, but there's really no more threshold than maybe like one minor QC flag. But if you started having issues where 2-3 drafts later and they're still coming back, in the company, and it's for TV, it's Extreme Reach. They're the ones who send it out to all the TV stations. They would come back and be saying, hey, this failed QC. At some point, that's going to be a problem for the client because it's costing them money, and then they're not going to air the ad on the date that they told their client. It would be a major problem.
And so it's all dominoes. So when you're the creator like Jeff is, there's a lot of people above him who have much higher paid jobs that are on the line, that are full-time. So they feel pressure that we don't even know about, but it does trickle down to us. So there's a lot of expectations on you as the filmmaker, especially as you get bigger and bigger clients. And those, you don't want to, the better impression you can make on them, the less work you give them. They're paying you to make their lives easier. So the more easy you make their lives, the more likely they are to go, let's just get Jeff to do it, or Brian, or Bob, or Caitlin. They'll just be like, we know that they can do it. We don't have to think about this. We're giving it to them. And then the jobs start coming in and the phone calls start coming in, which is when I left LA, that's kind of where I was at, where my network was the point where I was getting calls from strangers because enough people knew that I could handle what I was doing. And then, so that's how the freelance was working for me before I left.
Absolutely. I think you actually said that really well, as far as like what these clients are really paying for is they're paying like for that security of knowing it's going to get done. As soon as, especially when it comes to these tight deadlines, it's sort of maintaining reliability and trust, as far as them being able to say with almost complete certainty that, he can get this done in the next day or two is a lot of the reason why I have a roof over my head and why a lot of people trust me with, bigger client things, because, even if it means I have to sleep 3 hours that night, I'll make sure that it gets done in time for delivery. And I'm actually running into like a similar complication, because, I'm actually trying to, which I won't go off in too much of a tangent here, but I'm actually trying to expand my own operations within my own small business. But the biggest problem I've had is exactly what you said, Angelo. There's a very small group of people that I would trust to reallocate what my responsibilities are, and know in good faith that I can pass this to that person, and I know that I don't have to worry about it, so that I can work on this other thing, and then it will be done. And then if not, I end up actually worse off than I would have been having just never have done that in the first place, because now I still have this thing that I was expecting to do. Now I have to like stop what I'm doing, hop over to this other thing, fix it, and then like still be worrying about this other thing that I had been planning on doing. And that is always going to be the case with that client on the other end, whether they're the producer, director, agency representative, producer, executive producer, whoever it may be. They're grappling with similar types of pressure that they're relying on you. And as soon as that, like, they have to like stop what they're doing and more micromanage because like things aren't happening the way they expected, that's not good. So
let's see if I think we're almost done here. Do you think, because you talked about how you spent 10 years on that project getting these like very exclusive interviews, do you think that archival footage will make it into your final project? Do you have any plan for like somehow including it? Or
I would have to assume that there would. Yes.
So you have to hold on to that. But have you, the reason I was asking about archival is for the editing class that I teach, they're allowed to use 10% of their footage can be archival or stock. So can you talk at all about how archival or stock footage has helped your projects? As well as, have you ever used any of those websites where you get to host your own footage, your own cinematography work, and people can buy it?
I haven't. I'm not too involved in the contributor end, but as far as being on the receiving end, there's definitely lots. Stock has been a bigger and bigger resource, especially since quality of cameras and all these different things have gotten better over the years. But yeah, so it depends on what it's for. For a lot of the political cause marketing stuff, they, it sort of falls under fair use. So archival footage is fair use. And there's actually, certain entities, it all just depends on what the usage is for, because, political and cause marketing ads fall under fair use in the same way that sort of documentaries do. You're just looking to share, raise awareness to something. And that's a little bit different than having a commercial project that you're profiting off of using that piece of content in your movie or series, for example. So there's a little bit of case by case depending on what it is you're using these things for. But that doesn't really change for stock. That's really only the case for archival public domain stuff. That's really just going to depend on, are you using it for a documentary, a movie, a commercial, what have you? Stock is always the same. There's different rates.
Clear real quick, Jeff. I just want to talk for my students. The rules in my class for stock and archival are a little bit different. So when you get to my class, if you have questions about it, I'll clarify for you. Sorry, keep going. I just wanted
no worries. Okay, yeah. So I mean, stock is generally at least royalty-free stock, and I won't get too into the weeds on this, but royalty-free stock is essentially you just pay a flat fee and you're licensed to have it. But there's different rates based on the type of usage. For example, if you're only going to be running an ad that is up for a month, that's one rate. If you need it worldwide in perpetuity, which is usually what you need for a movie, meaning I can use this anywhere in the world forever. That's another rate. You know, so understanding those licenses and how they work, because in the commercial world, it's very particular in order to stay within budget of that commercial and knowing what the ad spend is going to be, because the cost of stock is dependent on that. Did I answer that question fully?
No, I think you did. I think you did great.
Okay.
Do you use stock footage in any of your pitches or sizzle reels or anything else you might have made to like garner attention?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but very minimally. I mean, you know, a pitch is always a little bit different because, you know, it's not, especially if it's like a closed door meeting, for example, you know, I don't want to say use anything and, you know, don't follow the rules or anything like that. But, you know, if it's going to be something that you're just using specifically for a closed door meeting and that isn't going out and published into the world, I think that there's a little bit of a different set of rules you can go by, because again, you're not publishing the work for profit. You know, you're just using it as a proof of concept for pitch. So I think for pitches, there's a little bit different rules, and I don't think you need to be as conscious of that. But again, if this is going to be a pitch that ends up on a public facing website, you know, or those end clients are then going to share it with other people and you don't know where it's going to end up, you know, that's a different story. So,
yeah,
you know, I would always advise just sort of following the rules of licensing projects. But, you know, if you're just doing a little closed door pitch and it's not something that's going out to broadcast for TV, or, you know, you're profiting off of, there's always exceptions to other rules, you know, that if it's something that's going to help your pitch, use it, but generally follow the rules. So,
okay. Thank you. Generally, we all follow the rules all the time as much as we can.
absolutely.
Jeff, would you, I feel like my last question before we open it up to everybody is, can you talk a little bit about, they're all kind of related. So I want to talk about like developing your thick skin, being able to take criticism, because you mentioned how like people told you your pitches weren't good enough. So a little bit about that, as well as anything about not just developing your thick skin, but also developing your instincts as you like, you know, what clients to take, what's worth your time, what maybe even how you determine to bill someone based off a project.
Absolutely.
Make it worth your time.
Absolutely. So there's a few different facets that I'd like to, I guess, kind of cover on this. And I hope I can remember them all. So, you know, as far as sort of the last point you made, as far as, you know, how to build, you know, bill clients, definitely there's always going to be a little bit of trial and error, and it's always going to be a little bit of a negotiation depending on who it is, but definitely be careful and thorough. Even to this day, there's deals I do that where I wish I had structured it differently. And I end up doing much more work, you know, than I would have liked. So definitely as you're growing and getting bigger clients, sort of keep constant track of what you're doing and how to bill that appropriately. Because you can very easily fall and find yourself in a project where you did not scope it out properly and it ends up being way more than you thought. And all of a sudden, this project you were excited about, you're no longer excited about. You know, other times you just have to learn client tendencies. Like, for example, in the cause, marketing, and political world, like they just have a fast-paced, crazy environment, but they're kind of willing to pay for it. And, you know, at first when I did an all-inclusive deal, it was much more stressful because they would ask me for late night things and I don't really get anything added for that. So I wasn't necessarily happy, but it was through that experience I learned how to bill for overtime and other things, which they were okay paying. So, you know, it was worked out better for both sides.
And how did you feel once you realized that and you gave them your new contract and they just said, okay, like
yeah, and you always have to feel it out, because the other thing I'd say be careful of is, you know, again, I think the commercial world is much more understanding and forgiving, but like, you know, the first precedent you set with people is sort of what they'll always see you as. For example, if you charge $1,000 for a music video, to that person, you're the person that makes music videos for $1,000 now. They're not gonna, you know, like for many people, if you go around and say, all right, now I want 3,000 for this next one, they're going to be like, well, what do you mean? We just did this last one for 1,000. So also be very conscious of like expectation management up front and how you conduct yourself the first time around, where again, it's like, I even to this day find myself in this weird position of like, okay, you want to overperform to sort of get your foot in the door and impress people, but you also have to be careful and expectation manage and set the precedent in a right enough way that you don't undervalue yourself and that you become that undervalued person because that's the way you've portrayed yourself in a way. And again, like, I think a lot of the, like, I've been able to, like, the way I've been able to get better clients is sort of like doing a piggyback towards better and better in clients where from the outset, I'm proposing a higher charge. Whereas in the political realm, I sort of had the leverage to do that and they knew that I had the leverage to do that. So again, it's all case by case negotiating. And this is where, like, you know, in this world, you have to work, you know, you have to wear the sales hat, and also like you have to be your own business person looking out for yourself as well. And knowing when you hold the leverage to be able to say, all right, you know, we did this thing, great. And now that we went through that, here's sort of what the new terms are. And generally that's much more understood in the corporate and larger commercial world.
I think that was a great answer. Do you want to talk a little bit about building your thick skin as well?
Yes. So I think there's sort of two sides to that. I think on the film side is more so you'll get outright critiqued because again, you're just, you know, there's, you know, even like, for example, this the screenwriting cover fly that I was telling you about, you know, it's of course makes me feel nice and warm and fuzzy that I'm in the top 1%, but I still get outright denied by some of the competitions that I enter where it just says, in fact, the other day it just said didn't even place at all, you know. So it's like I've heard other competitions where they're like, I wanted this one to be the winner, where they actually reached out to me personally after the fact. So the first thing to know is that, you know, everyone has different tastes, and you know, don't let anyone on the creative end ever discourage you, because you know, I've had people tell me that stuff is crap that I've had other people tell me is great, you know. And there's also you know, learning how to take constructive criticism. I think that over the years you'll sort of learn through how it's said and the way that it's said what constructive criticism is and what, I guess, non-constructive criticism is. And I think it's important to learn how to identify that and who you sort of keep in your circle for, you know, for example, anytime I send, you know, for like this script, I sent it to Angelo before I put it out in the world, because Angelo is someone who I trust, who will give constructive criticism. Like there's a difference between just being an a-hole and saying, hey, this doesn't work and here's why, you know. And you know, and again, especially when you're working with big, you know, bigger, more important people, you also just have to understand that they get a million pitches a day from the best people in the world, and they might come off as insensitive, but you also have to look at it from their perspective that your script number 10,000 this month, and if you didn't immediately catch their interest, and again, their interest might not be their interest, maybe they just don't like political crime thrillers and they want a family drama or something. Like, don't ever get caught up in like why and that side of things, because there's so many factors that some you may know, some you may never know till the day you die. So don't ever get caught up in that sense. Now, like on the other end, as far as developing thick skin, you know, like when you do get involved in these projects, like I can really only speak to this more on the commercial end, but you know, if you have some big creative ideas of, oh man, you know, like, you know, here's this vision I have for this commercial and it's going to be great, you know, don't necessarily go in with those expectations or hopes, because they'll almost 99% of the time be crushed. Oftentimes in the commercial world, you're dealing with certain forces and people. Like, for example, like on the commercial, there's sort of like 3 or 4 tiers of people who all have a say and sort of a sway in what the end product is. And they all have their different motives. Like, for example, you know, when I make an ad, that is, I'm working on behalf of an agency who is hired by a strategy firm who is hired by a candidate. So like the strategy company's trying to make the campaign happy, the agency is trying to make the strategist and the campaign happy. So I don't like, not to get too in the weeds, but like there's all these different people. So your ad is going to get cut up 20 different times for reasons that are completely outside of your control. And essentially, you know, as a post house or a creative suite, so to speak, you're really just engineering their desires. It's like you really have no input, so to speak. They're essentially just using you for your creative abilities, and it's not really up to you what the end product is. It's like you're there to serve them with your creativity, but they're the one, like they're the boss, they're the client. And again, you can always provide your insight and say, you know, I wouldn't recommend that or this and that, but like don't ever get emotional or like feel the desire to want to like lash out or say like, no, this needs to be that way, because like it's you're frankly just kind of wasting your time. And again, this goes back to the thing of like they're paying for something to be done and not having to think about it. And all of a sudden, if you're coming with these new sensitivities that like, okay, so now like this director editor is saying that this ad needs to be this way, like how do I go back to like the client and say that the director is demanding, like, and now you're like putting pressure on them, and like no, like they don't want that. So you just sort of have to put all of your own sort of sensibilities, I don't want to necessarily call it ego, aside, but just you're serving them. And you know, even though you're talented and might want to do something another way, and you think that the way they're doing it is stupid, it's like, if they're paying you to do it, then you're just there to serve them. And don't be so invested in the end product in the commercial world. You know, if these are stories that you want to tell and you're passionate about, you know, I'm hopping around a little bit, but I'm saying more so that on the commercial end. Now, if there's a story like, for example, my Panama story that is like very personal to me and intrinsic to my being and something that I'm passionate about, like I would give you much different advice as far as if people want to change the story and tell that another way, then I would probably stand my ground a little bit more. And if someone didn't see the story the same way I saw it, I probably just wouldn't work with them and wait to find the person who does share my vision. So I hope I made that distinction clear. I'm not just saying like, you know, just sell out your own values and do whatever else anyone says. I'm not saying that. It's more so when you're being hired for a particular commercial end product, you know, you can bring in your creativity and your ideas, but you're there to serve them ultimately, because it's their idea in the first place that they're hiring you to creatively fulfill, but it's still their idea and their vision that you're just helping them bring that vision to light.
I've got a good example of that commercial thing happening. I did a lot of high-end commercials in Singapore, and you could see the budget and the people involved, because I would be working directly for the director, like helping him. The director they'd finish a take, and then he'd have to go to a different monitor where one set of clients were, talk to that set of clients about what they thought about the last take, while one of the people from that group was on the phone describing to a boss that for whatever reason wasn't there, of the ad agency. So there's like an ad agency, there's a production company. So every single take, there's someone just whose job is to describe what happened in the last take. They would all have a huddle, and then the director would come back from that huddle and then tell the actress, can you do it a little happier? And that was like the whole like 20-minute huddle was like they just wanted a little happier version of what they just, you know, you're selling. I think it was yogurt. You want to be happier about the yogurt. But yeah, like that was definitely like, that definitely happens where like there's just so many other people above you who all want to have their say and are also justifying why their job exists. So they have to say something. So yeah, it happens for sure.
And even on top of that, you know, sometimes you'll get hit with real unrealistic ideas. And I think it's important to know how to articulate, like when something is just ridiculous or not even possible, how to articulate in kind terms, like, you know, oh, hey, like, can we turn this person's hair orange and have that in like 4 hours? You know, like they don't necessarily know how like visual effects works. And like, they might sound stupid to you, but you have to sort of like release the urge to like to sound angry or condescending and sort of like explain and sort of professional terms, like an outline, while doing that and sort of in like try to explain in someone who doesn't understand production why that isn't possible. Here's other things that we could do to help satisfy this thing you're trying to do. And it's dealing with like personalities, and sometimes weird personalities or aggressive personalities or like hard to decipher personalities, and just not wanting to pull your hair out in the process, especially when it's short deadlines and high stress situations.
There can also be cultural and language differences as well, because I've worked with a lot of Japanese clients or clients from other countries. So there's a lot of things. So what essentially Jeff is saying is staying professional and knowing enough about your craft that you can offer alternatives to solve their problems, make their lives easier so that they call you again for the next one. Exactly. And they'll remember those things when they're like, oh, I really wanted the character's hair to be orange, but Jeff explained this to me really well. And we came up with like digital solution where he's going to like create a graphic, and we're fine with how the graphic looks, but like whatever it is, he had a solution for it. And he saved us money, because if we had waited for the orange hair, we would have halted production. We would have had to shoot on the next day. We would have rented the gear and hired everybody back, which adds up to so much. Right. So that's something that they would appreciate and understand. I wanted to go an hour. We're at an hour and 20 minutes. So let's open this up and take a few questions before you have to go, Jeff, because I know you have a lot, you still have work to do tonight. Sure. Let's start with the first question, which was written, how can I find local film offices to make sure if I find a website, how can I tell the difference between a scam and a legit website? I wouldn't say, I haven't heard of a lot of scam websites, but I would just say your local film commission. Like if you're, sometimes your mayor's office is who you contact first, and they can tell you who's in charge. Or sometimes it's depending on if you're near a big enough city, you'll just be able to Google film commission. It's important that you're not just saying film office. You want your film commission. Do you have any advice on that, Jeff? Make sure you're talking to the right people.
Yeah, film commissions are very important because anytime you're filming on location in any state, they're the entity that you have to go through to get permits on the street and things of that nature. They also have, directories of different, creative vendors and things like that that can give you access to, whether that be, a G&E rental house to any type of crew member. So yes, I would definitely agree that it's very important to know the role of a film commission and the various benefits that they bring. More usually it's when you're filming, but really it could be in any instance, especially, I mean, even if you're funding, a film, it's good to know your state incentives, which that's a whole other conversation, but definitely, to answer the film commission question, definitely always check the film commission because they have directories. And as far as like a website, I guess that would depend on, if it's something that you would, be looking to hire that person and pay that person, I would just recommend, doing a quick call or meeting or emailing that person to see whatever website you're on to like do a little fact checking yourself to make sure they're legit. But I think it's, generally speaking, you should be able to spot any flags if someone's representing themselves inaccurately.
I had someone try to scam me once. It was off some website. They were looking for like a first AD to help create a budget for their film, and then actually AD the film once it was greenlit. And then they're like, oh, we got greenlit. We're going to send you the money to start setting up this shoot. And then as soon as they sent the money, they did something weird where they retracted the money, or they were like, oh, the shoot got canceled. Can you send us the money back? And I immediately contacted my bank because it seemed fishy. And they were like, yeah, the money hasn't actually come in. So one thing I would say, at least from that specific instance, is if anyone sends you money and then immediately goes, okay, we actually need that back, that's a good sign that there's something fishy going on. Deborah asked if a YouTube channel with 32 subscribers and a lot of videos, some of them my brothers, does that count as a portfolio? I want to answer this first. I would say that your portfolio should be separate from just a YouTube channel. Your portfolio can pull in the YouTube videos. They can be hosted on YouTube, but you want a nice, clear website where you're only showing your best work. You don't want them to go through 32 films to find the one good one. You want them to, that you want to curate the experience for them so that they're getting that. Also, if you're sharing it with your brothers, that'll be confusing too. They might go, we loved your work, and find out they're actually talking to your brother instead. You need a portfolio that's just for you, that's just showcasing your best work. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree entirely. You know, it goes back to the whole, you know, make the person whose business you're trying to gain is make it as easy as possible for them to see what you can offer.
Exactly. And I would say your portfolio should also very clearly on every page have a way to contact you, whether it's clicking to send you an email, your phone number, your email written, whatever it is. But just like Jeff said, the easier you make it on them to get a hold of you and contact you and start this process, the more likely it is to happen. Because if they're like, oh, I liked this video, but then scroll through a bunch of stuff, can't figure out how to contact you, they will just move on because they'll find someone else's video they liked. And if they're more easy to contact, that's who they'll get to.
And it's also great too. Like, I think like having a well put together website is the perfect tool for, you know, for example, the friends that I know, if it's easier for them to refer me, for example, oh, hey, Jeff, here's his website, here's what he does. It makes it easier for that person to refer you rather than, oh, like, let me see where his YouTube page is and see if I can find the video where he did this one thing that I think you need.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, I can't stress enough, just making it easier, because then those people who like your work and want to refer you to someone else, if it's easy for them and like not awkward for them to just be like, oh yeah, here's his website right there, rather than having to like dig and find stuff and then, oh, it's not there, let me find the link, let me look in my old emails, you know, like now 2 minutes has gone by and the person's like getting bored who like potentially wanted a video. So yeah,
and
definitely.
I can say for sure that I have sent people your website. Like, it's just easier and simpler. Like, yes,
Right.
my buddy Jeff can handle this. Here's his website. And
Exactly.
it's his calling card. It's his first impression, and it makes him look good. So it's an easy thing to do. It's easy for me to give that link. It's easy for them to see it. And it's easy to process all the information because it's well, not choreographed. Thinking of the curated, that's the word I was trying to think of.
Right.
Thank you for being here, Janice. Sorry we ran long. If you have a question real quick, Janice, you can ask. Anyone else who has a question, please raise your hand and we'll address you one at a time. If you guys don't have questions, that's okay. Oh, Jonathan's literally raising his hand. Go for it if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't find the hand raise button. And thanks so much, Jeff. That's a lot of really awesome advice. I got a real quick question. If do you have any go-to shots where if I didn't tell you anything about the project that you're making, do you already have a game plan of shots for B-roll that you're going to get no matter what the project is?
That's an interesting question.
No, I think actually, so like, at least in my experience, like the B-roll has always been, well, I don't want to make a blanket statement. I should say that in, I generally no, because a lot of times second unit or B-roll is actually done after the fact. For example, in a film, you'll do principal photography, but then they won't do a second unit pickup until there's a first cut, because they actually need to know, based on the pacing of the film, what parts do we need to sort of stretch out and include some transition shots to know how, like, what shot needs to be there, how long it needs to be, for example. So, you know, in the film sense, that is actually done after the fact. And in the commercial sense, you know, there's so much stock out there these days that is good, high quality stock that is B-roll. For example, Film Supply, Film Pack, Shutterstock, Getty, especially Film Pack and Film Supply. You should all check that out if you haven't already. But these are, you know, 4K cinematic DPs that build story-based B-roll. A lot of the biggest, I mean, Netflix uses them, HBO uses them, we use Film Supply all the time. So a lot of the times, the B-roll or second unit is an afterthought to the principal photography. I hope that answered your question.
It's not helping my class because of how much I stress B-roll, but
I'm sorry.
but,
It does answer it. I pretty much
Okay.
asked if I could cut corners, and you told me no. So thanks.
Yeah, and there, if you, so I have some experience with like a lot of times, at least in the early 2000s, there was companies who like, I don't want to call anyone out, but like cable companies. And when you buy advertising space for cable companies at a certain package, it comes with a free commercial for local businesses. So they're trying to get you to subscribe, but also buy ad space. And so one of the things that they use to pull people in is like, we'll give you our best high-tech film crew that's going to come in and make you a customized commercial. And in those cases, they are not customized. There's a template that they're following, and they have a template for like every business style. Are you selling a product? Are you selling a service? If so, it's this. If so, it's that. And so if you're talking about cutting corners, there are cookie cutter filmmakers that do exist. And that is not a bad, at least getting your foot in the door and like getting experience and learning how to shoot stuff and getting a lot of things in your reel. That's not actually a bad place to start, but it might be a bad place to gain a unprofessional habit where you don't want to be like, once you're out of that job, you don't want to be cookie cutter anymore. You want to understand shots. You want to understand your motivation and why you're choosing them, but you don't want to feel like you're in a box that you got to continually do the same thing.
Absolutely. And you actually bring up a good point that I do want to make an important, difference here is when the examples I give, that's also because that is a planned part of that workflow where there is money left in the budget for second unit after the fact, and that's a planned occurrence. And in the commercial world, they know that they have budget for stock that we can use after the fact. There's other instances, if you're on a really shoestring budget independent film where you only have this Arri Alexa for 4 weeks, and you're not going to have the budget to do pickup shots after the fact and all the actors, and let's say you have a pickup, like a picture car that's part of the movie and you need to get a shot of it driving and you only have that picture car for such amount of days and you're on a tight budget, like definitely get that B-roll then, because if it's not something planned, you want to have that stuff in the can already. So and that's why I even said before, I don't want to say that's a blanket statement. It's all very case by case, but sort of as long as you're sort of considering and allocating, budget, time, and all these things accordingly, for example, I don't know what, the projects Angelo is assigning, but if it's something where you only have a couple days to film and then you're already in editing and you're obviously not going to have time to go back and do second unit reshoots after the fact, that would, not speaking for him, probably being why he's advising, get the B-roll ahead of time because you don't have this luxury. What I'm saying is getting this stuff is really more so a luxury of bigger budget things, and they know that they can do that. But there's also many cases where, like on the first film I DP'd, we did our B-roll.
I'm back.
How's it going?
Hey, Deborah.
We did all our second unit like while we were filming because we knew we didn't have the budget for it. So that's all.
So yeah, the planning is important. Caitlin, I see your hands up. Was your question the same one that you wrote? Because you actually wrote that before Jared. I'm trying to do you guys in order. As far as the business cards go, I think it's an excellent idea. The one edit I would make to what you said is it shouldn't be links plural. Get just one good link that goes to your splash page of your profile of your portfolio. From there, you can have, if social media is important to you, you could have your social media links, you could have a personal email, you could have your reel, but whatever it is, just don't clutter up a business card. Don't confuse the people even more. I would just clean and simple and clear is what I would say. Your hand is still up. Was that your question or did you have something else?
I had a little bit more of a question, but that was mostly because
Hi,
I haven't
Caitlin.
ever used the hand raise before. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I
Hi,
don't have a camera on. I was in the middle
Caitlin.
of tweeting. What?
Hi, Kayla Hardeman. Hi. It's
Hello.
Deborah. I'm in here too.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good,
you
good.
doing
In the middle of
cinematography? What
cleaning
are
the
you
house
in?
and moving. I'm sorry.
I'm in digital cinematography. What degree program are you in?
I'm in digital cinematography as well.
Hey! Hey.
That's what's up. So I
Sorry,
I
Caitlin,
was
so what
wondering,
is your question?
so yeah, my question. So I see people's business cards and they have like a Twitter handle and they have those. Then I see very, very straight up business cards. So mostly I was wondering, which I think you pointed out with that, because I ever since I watched American Psycho, I'm like a business card snob.
Mhm.
And then
Well, you got to get it on that ivory tusk or whatever it is he says in the film.
I actually knew a guy, and yes, I dated him, and he had a whole entire thing made of his name, but like the whole entire style from American Psycho. I didn't know if I should have ran out the door or what, but who knows? Maybe he's just cool. But the other thing that I was wondering is, do you want to kind of stick to like LinkedIn or Dropbox, or does it never hurt to have too many? And what, like, maybe I'll learn more about this because I don't really know LinkedIn. I was a bartender until I started doing all this. Slash, I was always an artist, but movie enthusiast.
I can say from my personal experience, I update LinkedIn every time I need a job. But I don't think I've ever gotten a job from LinkedIn. That doesn't mean you couldn't, but I just, for me, I guess it is kind of fishing with dynamite. Like I'll sign up and be on as many websites as possible when I was freelance. Like I just wanted wherever this could possibly go to lead me to more work. That was the answer. That was what that was how I handled it. So I was on LinkedIn. I was on Mandy. I don't know if that's still going on, but there is a site that's called Mandy that it's pretty much the exact format as Craigslist, but it's almost exclusively for the entertainment industry. So that was like a way to get like lower paid gigs, but you could get on a lot of things and it can add up and you can network with it. Jeff, did you have any like websites you could recommend people to be on?
Sure.
Yeah, 'cause I have a pen and paper. I'm writing it all down.
The only thing I would recommend or consider is that, every separate link that you include on that card is another separate link that you have to upkeep and keep current. So, at one point, I think I still do, not that it really matters, but like, I have social handles for each of my two companies. I just stopped maintaining them because it wasn't even worth. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would be worth it. And if I did that, I would get more business through Facebook. Who knows? I'm not saying do it or don't, but for my business and who my clients were, it just didn't make sense to me to have to constantly update Facebook and other handles and like sort of stay current and be, make Facebook posts. Hey, here's what Reagent's working on this month. Like, because otherwise I would be spending half of my time on social media updating and making new posts rather than like doing the other work to like that the clients need. But again, if you have ambitions to like grow into a bigger business where you have someone full time that's sort of maintaining those pages, great. My only point is the more links you include means that they might go to your Twitter first or your Instagram first instead of your website. And then if your Instagram doesn't have, your most recent DP work on there, then now you've led them to a place where they're looking at 3-year-old work because you don't maintain it. So, there's no hard
social
and fast
media
rule.
to your websites, maybe, because like
What's
I
that?
know a couple of people. So like I have a couple of friends, and they do this YouTube show that got huge, and like I met up with him in California, and he was telling me like he can't keep up with his own social media profile anymore, and he was literally going to have to hire somebody to do it. And then
Right.
back in the day, I
That's not a
used to
bad
model.
problem to have.
Yeah, it's a pain, but it's like I used to model, and then I started going to school and didn't model as much, and I'm almost 30, so you don't do that as much anymore when you're older. And like I would post my art and get excited about it. I would get 3 likes on it. I'd post a selfie and it was like 500. So I always kind of felt like those social medias would only be kind of better once you're a little bit more established, and maybe just have it as a professional page. Be like, if you want to contact this person, go here.
Yeah.
Well,
And
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I would say that, like social media presence is its own thing to be managed, and it should be considered as such. It's not just, oh, like I have this page, and it's either like, if you're going to use it for business, you either don't do it and don't have that be an outlet, or like you have to go all in in the same way of that you would keep your portfolio or resume or website up to date. Otherwise, it's just another potential for them to be led to something that's going to be outdated. So, you know, like for example, the people you mentioned about the YouTube page, like if they were like, you know, YouTube stars, or that's sort of what their thing is, that would make much more sense, obviously, that they maintain their YouTube page and keep everything up to date, because, you know, they're probably monetizing off of views and that's how they make their living. So it's always going to be case by case, depending on, you know, what are your aspirations. You know, like if you want to make YouTube videos and monetize off YouTube videos, that's something you can absolutely do. People make tons of money off of that. In that case, then it's all about you maintaining that YouTube channel, you know, like even probably more so than the website, because you know, it's the bigger important thing would be you making sure that you're getting traffic to your YouTube page and everything that goes along with that. So you know, the general answer is that depending on where you want your presence to be, that's fine. Include as much or as little of it as you can. Just you have to consider social media presence as its own thing to be managed and taken seriously. And it's not just, you know, some little informal handle you can have that you should be showcasing unless you're fully invested in maintaining those pages.
Cool.
Right, which
Can
I
jump in?
don't want to. I don't want to be known. I did front of the camera thing for a long time. I'm 100% behind the camera. Now when they say like you have to do a video of yourself, I'm like, oh God, okay. And so yeah, okay, that answered a lot of questions. So for me, I think I got what I needed out of that.
Well, I got a little
And
more to
thank you.
add, if you don't mind, Caitlin.
Not at all.
Just to clarify, in your situation, if you don't make like Instagram or YouTube your focus, then I would say just have it go to your website so people can see your portfolio. And then if they're more interested, they'll dig deeper because you'll have links to your other social media. But like Jeff said, if you're going to create a professional presence in social media, you end up having to maintain it as well, because you don't want someone to see that link and go, oh, that's not what I'm looking for, because it's like 3 years old or not updated or whatever it is. The other factor that you can think about is, I don't know how many followers you already have, but sometimes people will go, okay, I need to separate my personal Instagram from my professional. And that sometimes that means you would go through, because you already have built this following, that might mean you might want to go through your page and delete all your personal photos and just keep it trim and neat and just about your professional work. The other thing I would say is, if you have a friend who has an incredibly successful YouTube channel who's looking to hire someone, my biggest question would be, and I don't know your whole situation, why isn't that person you? Because you could be they're literally opening up a network connection to you. You could be learning about how they started their YouTube channel, what's making their success. You could be getting a lot of behind the scenes information. You could potentially be helping them with their shoots, because that's part of garnering the social media and the other sort of advertisements and little materials they might need that aren't necessarily YouTube videos. You could help them create more of those materials for them. So it's just a suggestion. I don't know your full situation, but situations like this are the kind of thing you might want to jump in on when you hear about them.
Right. I never thought of it that way, because I mean, I kind of met them as a fan and then became friends. But yeah, no, but I wasn't in film school back then. I was 22 working at a restaurant.
Well, you're in
so,
film
like,
school
now
now.
I'm
You
doing
got
all
to start
that.
pitching yourself to all the people you know and who you've met.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, because, you know, I mean, I never want to be a showboat, but I used to work like on the 16th Street in downtown Denver, and I got a lot of connections because of it. And I've never, until you just said that, I have never understood why this didn't click until just now, that I could be writing those people trying to network.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You got me.
So I think it was Jared. Jared, you've had your hand up for a while. I'm sorry about that. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're in a blue room. I dig it.
Yeah, as a light, I can switch it to like any color, but it's on blue right now. But towards Jeff mentioning QC failures, I was curious if if there's like a #1 QC failure that stands out above the rest, or that he knows of to watch out for.
That I've been involved with, or just generally speaking?
just generally speaking, like it doesn't, I'm not saying that you fail all the time.
You
I'm
want
just
to know
saying
your
that
specific failures, Jeff?
yeah, no, I'm just saying it. Yeah.
You know, I've never really had any you know, like for example, things will get flagged in QC all the time. Like sometimes something's like a frame long or the volume's a little bit too loud. That's a naturally occurring thing where maybe it'll get kicked back once you fix it and it's done. I've never really been in any situation where it's like, you know, 3 or 4 tries later, we're still QCing. Generally speaking, I've never heard of anything like horrible, I guess, as far as QC. I mean, I'd say maybe the worst story I've ever heard, just as far as like things going wrong for a film, would be, I think it was Oliver Stone, the Alexander film with Colin Farrell.
Rosario Dawson.
It was it was either a camera assistant or someone just like brought the film through security at the airport and just deleted half the movie.
Because
So
of
the
the-
legend goes.
Because of
And
the
this was
X-rays?
yeah, and this was they had been shooting on film, so they had to like refilm half that movie. I might be getting some of the details wrong, but I'm sure you can find it online. The Alexander movie. That's probably like, if I was that person, I don't even know what I would like do, but hopefully that never happens. And we're not shooting on film as much anymore. So
Can you talk a little bit about, because you said a frame. So in my class, I'm super strict about the short film. They have a specific runtime it's allowed to be in, and I say not even a second below or above. You said a frame. That's even stricter than what I say. So can you talk about that at all?
Absolutely. And, you know, with ads obviously have to be, you know, 30 seconds to the frame. And then on top of that, there's additional, because it requires a 7-second slate at the beginning and then 2 seconds of black. And you have to make sure it's called an ISCI, is sort of like the code. It's like the barcode associated with your ad, so to speak. So you have to make sure you get the ISCI number right, and that all of the information on the slate matches. You have to make sure that you're using the proper version of the mix, because oftentimes a mixer will give you both a digital and TV mixed version. Because on digital meaning Facebook, social, things like that, generally you want the audio to be a little bit louder, because someone could be listening on their iPhone through the speakers, and there's really no volume standard in the digital space, really. So they really just pump to be as loud as possible. Whereas broadcast has a different standard, and you'll usually get both mixes from a mixer. You know, you have to make sure you're at the proper frame rate, because they'll only accept 2397 or 2997. You can't be flat 30 or flat 60 or, you know, anything else. It has to be ProRes 422 HQ. It can't be any other codec, things of that nature. So, you know, it's kind of just becomes second nature to me after you've done it 100 times. You can actually, even in Media Encoder, in Adobe Media Encoder, you can actually just make it a preset now, so that you don't even have to think about it. You just drop on the preset. It'll export with all of the sort of QC ready presets in place. That doesn't mean you still have to drop in the right mix into your timeline and make sure that all of your slate information is correct, because that's a different story. But at least from a technical standpoint, it'll ensure that it's the right frame rate, the right resolution, and so on, the right codec. So
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
And one other thing, just real quick, I was wondering, so much talk about portfolios. Can we get the link to Jeff's portfolio so we can kind of, you know, brainstorm ideas?
Reagent.com. Is that where it is, Jeff?
you can go to reagentfilms.com, REAGENT films.
I'm putting it in the chat.
Oh yeah, that would probably be easier, right?
Can you repeat that?
Sure.
put it
It's
in the
actually
chat.
in the chat now.
See it, yeah.
So there was one last question for Ladarian. I didn't quite understand it. Can you unmute and maybe explain what you meant? He said,
Thank
I
you
have
again, Jeff. Thank you.
I can hear you now.
But what I was asking was that I have a camera that I use strictly for photography, and I have the school video package, and I'm starting to build a small list of clientele for people that want me as a photographer, but also there are other people that want video, like people that want to do music videos and whatnot. So should I separate those two entities since they're two different types, or should I just keep all that work all together for the portfolio? still work for photography as
For
video.
me, I would have it on the same website, but I would just have it clearly labeled like photography, videography, and people can go to what they need. Jeff might have a different idea.
Yeah, you know, it depends on sort of what the range of skill sets are. I actually have, as I was saying, the second company, which I'll actually post the second one right now. This is more of the cause marketing political site. Not that you have to look at that or anything, but it's really just to answer your guys' question that, you know, I deal like the cause marketing and political stuff is very different from, I would say, you know, film and even just standard commercial, that I found it's easier for me to separate those things just because of the nature of the work and how vastly different they are and the type of clients that I have. But, you know, if you have a site where you're just, you know, maybe showcasing different skill sets, like, you know, photography and you know, editing or something like that, I think that you can keep those grouped together, but it's really case by case. I mean, I think I would maybe just feel out, you know, the responses you get based on the clientele you're going after. And again, yeah, like it's a constant, you know, evolving process as far as learning how you can best represent yourself. Because another thing that I've grappled with, I won't go too far in the weeds, is like, you know, making the decision, and I'm actually at a crossroads with this too, is like building up versus building out. Where, and, you know, building up meaning, do you just want to try to, you know, stay a freelancer representing yourself? You know, hi, I am Jeff Osborne. Here are the things I can offer, and getting bigger and bigger clients that way, just building yourself up. Or do you want to build out, meaning hiring other staff beneath you, you know, and hiring people in different facets? And this is something that I grapple with and I'm having challenges with to this day, because when you build out with more people, you know, now you're going to be spending most of your time managing people instead of creating, because you're now a business owner. You're dealing with payroll and hiring and firing people and dealing with how to structure your own business. So like, it's a completely different thing. So that's, and I think that goes hand in hand. Like you'll even see from my websites, I'm caught in this like weird middle ground where it's like, I sort of project myself as sort of like a boutique creative firm, but you know, it's sort of like, if you really look into it, you'll just see it's like, generally I only talk about me, and like my brother is my business owner. So, you know, I don't try to like say anything that isn't really there, but I also don't really portray myself as like, I'm just Jeff Osborne either, because I'm sort of caught in between right now, between the various perceptions people have and sort of the way I want to portray my companies. Because I actually, in this upcoming political cycle, like I have a level of demand that now I can't even fulfill. So I'm actually looking to bring on sort of a part-time support staff for the next few months, which again, as I'm getting presented with these challenges of how can I stay doing mostly creative while managing these other people. But again, back to the original question, because I know there's probably more and people want to get out of here, I'm sorry, is, you know, it's always case by case, but I would just feel out depending on how you want to separate either your skill sets or the types of business you want to do. If that, hopefully that answers your question.
Yes.
So just for reference, I can't remember the guy's name right now, but I'm having a blank on that. But I used to work with this guy in LA who does all of the Marvel billboards. Like that's his photography. Like he does like any major film, he's the, like everybody calls this guy to do the big posters and billboards. And what I noticed when I looked at his portfolio is he had a section for like, here's all my, you know, top tier work for photography. But he's also famous for doing shark videography. So he has like amazing videos that he likes to dive and like swim with sharks and shoot all this video. He didn't separate that into two separate businesses. I don't know if that helps you, but like he just made it all clear. Like, here's who I am, here's what I do, and here's the sections where you can go to find the different materials you might want from me. So he only maintains one website doing that, or the people he pays, because he makes a ton of money doing all this. but I was just hoping maybe that helps you. Of like, you can look up like famous people and check out their portfolios if they're maintaining them, and you might find stuff that really helps you with these decisions. The other thing Jeff mentioned that I just want to reiterate is it is ever evolving. So you might try something, realize you're not getting maybe the attention you wanted in a certain way. You can mix and match, try different things, get feedback from your teachers while you're still in school and by your classmates, see what works. It's never going to be like, it's never set and done. You're going to get more materials. You're going to shoot more projects. You're going to keep updating things. And so that's all I had to say about that. And and just as a disclaimer, Jeff gave you a link to his work. That's just to show you the kind of work he does. We're not like pushing any political agenda, neither me, him, or
Absolutely.
Wholesale. If the videos you see there are not what you agree with, the point isn't to be like, hey, look how the point is to be like, here's the professional level of work and how he maintains his website.
Absolutely.
I think we've taken about 2 hours of Jeff's time. He's still got 4 hours of work before he can, have dinner. So anybody wants to say goodbye and thank you. And is there any way people can reach you if they wanted to like ask any other questions? Can they contact you through your website?
Sure. So those two websites you see there, the Reagent Films and Blue Reel, you could either I'll just type it out, but Jeff at either of those are both of my emails. I'll put them in the chat right now. But perfect example, quick and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Just the first name and then the company. But yes, feel free to contact those. I don't, yeah. I mean, if anyone has any other last minute questions, I don't mind sticking around for another minute. But yeah, I appreciate everyone joining, and Angelo, thank you for letting me
Thank you
have
for
a question.
being here. It was awesome, Jeff. I think it went great. I feel like I learned some stuff. I hope the students all feel like they enjoyed it and learned stuff too.
Sure. I think Trevor, was that you who said something?
Yes, sir. Just in your opinion, what's the best lens for universal everything? Like we're filming, like
A lens? Ooh.
I know my answer.
Yeah. Are you talking still photography or cinematography?
Cinematography. Sorry.
I would definitely look into Cooks. It sort of depends on the budget range as well, but definitely check out
budget friendly.
Budget friendly. I would definitely check out the Zeiss. I think they're on CP3s now, but the Zeiss CPs are very good, nice and crisp. I use that for a lot of commercial work.
How do you spell that? Zeiss.
I believe it's ZEISS.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Trevor, he was talking about brands. Did you, just to be clear, were you actually asking like 50 millimeter, 75 millimeter? Were you looking at for like one lens that you could use for a lot of things? Is that what you're trying to ask?
Right. But you mean the brand is I was gonna kind of put two and two together with the brand, but yeah, like millimeter wise, like 50 mil or
I mean, 50 mil is definitely the safest bet as far as just getting, if you're going to be on a prime. Of course, it's all depending on.
Going to be my answer.
Yeah, definitely, if you're going to be filming something, you'll likely want to come with a set of at least 3 lenses. Maybe like a 25, a 50, and 100, maybe even longer, depending on the types of shots you want to get. But 50 mil is a very common interview lens, for example. And it's if you were to only have one lens, I would definitely say get a 50.
Yeah, I got nifty 50. Yeah.
The other reason I say 50 is because I was at least trained to believe that 50 is the closest to the human eye. So it's the most natural, like when you're just going to see an image, whether it's far away or close, it's going to just kind of match your eye the best. I have met a few people who have gone, no, it's a 65, or no, it's like, people argue about it a little bit, but for me, at least 50 is the most natural lens. So I get the most out of it. There's a lot of cameras that come with, like plastic zoom lenses, so you might get something that's like 25 to 120 or something like that, and I use those too. So like if you could get a cheap reliable zoom lens, you'll have less light coming in. Usually zoom lenses don't get as much light, or you can't open the f-stop as much. But that can also, like, if you're just starting and you can't afford 3 separate primes, maybe you could get a good cheap zoom that like covers enough of those ranges that you could still get something out of it. I don't know, Jeff, do you agree with that? You do more cinematography than me.
No, absolutely. I mean, yes, it's always tough to get, because I've been in the same situation where it's like I just started out, I think, with like 1 lens, then it became a few. The first one I got was a 50, and then I got a 70 to 200 zoom and a 25 after that.
And he kept really good care of them because I've used them and we've had them on his commercial sets. Like, if you take good care of your lenses, keep them clean, maintain them,
Absolutely.
treat them with respect, there'll be investments that help you for a long time. More than the cameras will get outdated before the lenses do.
Right. And I also got spherical lenses because, these were attached to my 5D, which I was using for both stills and video. So like I kind of needed a one size fits all for depending on what I was doing. But, if you're someone who's more focused in cinematography, and specifically cinematography, like, there's also certain things to consider. Like, do you want to get anamorphic lenses? And then because there's a lot of different things that go along with getting anamorphic, because then you're stuck to that aspect ratio and there's a squeeze involved, which then changes your post workflow. But, anamorphic lenses are a very common workflow for a lot of higher end DPs. So yeah, something else to consider too. But
Sean is asking about advice outside the United States. Sean, can you tell me where specifically? Because that might help with the advice. For me, I had to move to Singapore, and from Singapore, it's a very small country, and I wanted to shoot more things. So I ended up shooting in all over Southeast Asia, and Japan, and China, Africa. I did 1 music video in London. So from all that travel, my point is that there's things to consider every single time. So one is, do you speak the same language where you're talking about? If you do, that's going to help you a ton. If you're from there, there might not be any cultural issues, so that helps. But so Sean, I'm asking, like, are you traveling Do you already live there? What more can you ask us about the advice you need?
Yeah, that's not a problem. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
yeah,
So the biggest thing is, no, we came over here on military orders.
Okay.
So language barrier there is when it comes to like finding the film commissions and things around here. 2, when you're not a local national here and you're on the military base, it's like totally different. You can't, it's like certain restrictions. We can't have jobs on the economy and different things like that. So this process has been a little difficult.
Can you tell us what country you're in? Is that okay?
Trying to find the right. I'm in Germany. Oh, I forgot. I'm in Germany. So I'm the one that you have been talking to. That was in the emergency room and things like that. So I'm in Germany. So it's been some up and downs throughout especially like the last 4 or 5 classes.
Well, you're in a pretty unique situation as far as the classes go with your military situation. You were cutting out a little. Were you saying you're not allowed to film off base, or there was issues if you do?
No, we could film off base. We can't like have jobs off base. We can't film off base though. But the lane outside of the person that I just did like the interviews and things on, everyone else is like a huge language barrier. And when it comes to doing anything on base, you have to go through like public affairs and a lot of different people when it comes to, and then getting approval by different higher ranking officers and things like that.
Violet Darian, thanks for being here. Sean, so getting work, that I can see why that's a problem with like visas and your particular situation. Are you allowed to volunteer or intern, or like can you just be on sets just to learn?
When COVID hit, the military stopped doing it.
Okay.
So I asked that 2 classes ago. Well, no, like 3 months ago with like AFN, the Armed Forces Network. And they,
William's offering to help. So like, even if you can't help, that's some networking right there. So maybe just make sure you get William's email address. If you could pop it up real quick before the session's over, William. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And my experience with Germany and Germans, I haven't actually been to Germany, but there's a big population in Singapore and other places I've filmed. A lot of Germans I met spoke English. So are you sure?
yeah.
if
A
you-
lot of them do speak. A lot of them do speak English.
A lot of the
So-
German government stuff requires you speak German.
I guess you would say have a story. A story, though, they're not just like student things like that. That barrier is a little difficult, and Will may be able to speak to that.
So I mean, Sean, honestly, I think this could be a much longer conversation, and I could talk to you more about this. So if you want to call me tomorrow, we can totally go over this. Or if you're not free tomorrow, call me whenever you are free. But I do want to find some solutions for you. And Jeff, do you have any advice? But for me, I think we just got to talk it out some more.
Okay. Yes, I'm, there's definitely things that I'm thinking of, I guess it would depend on, what type of work are you looking to get into? And because, you're definitely in a very special situation, something that I don't personally have experience with, but,
Right.
Trying to picture myself in your situation, if you're, let's say you're an aspiring director or writer or something like that, I don't know if it's you or your spouse who's the one who's in the military, and how much of your bandwidth that takes, but I don't know if it's just a matter of working on your craft, like just keep writing, and get your writing out there. Again, it's all case by case on what you're trying to do right now, that your
Right.
location is hindering you from doing that. But, if it's also, like a financial thing, and you don't have to give me any details on that front, but like, that obviously complicates things even more. But, like right now, for example, if it's just about you working on your craft, I would assume that there's going to be a lot of red tape about getting official approvals from the military to film on the base. So I would avoid that. But like, for example, like, and I'm not saying that this is what you would want to do or is your interest, but, like starting a YouTube channel and just doing, like little, very informal shorts or something of that nature that isn't like a big crew footprint and something that's going to like raise flags on base. And again, always follow the rules. I'm not telling you not to follow the rules, but it's like, it's much different filming, for example, like starting a cooking YouTube channel and you're filming that in your kitchen and getting views and monetizing off of that, versus doing a full-on short film on base, which would probably violate certain amounts of rules. So I'm not saying don't break the rules, but maybe there's some avenue for you if it's just about, working on your craft, just starting a YouTube channel and doing something very simple, low footprint, just around the house, or not anything that's going to raise flags on base, but something that's within the realm of possibility for you to do. I don't know. I think there's a lot of variables. I'm with Angelo. If there's a conversation you want to offline and talk about that further, I could be more helpful with more specifics, but that's just my general takeaway, if that's even helpful.
Right. It is. Like I said, I was just trying. It's like the last 3 or 4 classes I've asked every professor, do they have any advice being over in Europe?
Right.
So
The other thing I think of, like, I think you were asking about paid work, but maybe there's a local film school near you where you could just be on crews with other students. Like if you were just getting that experience and networking with those people, that could open up a lot of things for you. So I know that when I was in film school, there was an acting school nearby. So I just I was always over there or contacting them. So I always had like a whole roster of actors who were interested in being whatever short film I came up with, as well as sometimes when they had projects, like, because they're creative too. So it'd be like, we have to, for their school, sometimes they would have projects where they would be like, we have to do a monologue, or we have to do a scene with two people that involve certain rules because of their assignments, but they don't know how to shoot it, or they don't want to shoot it because they're focusing on the acting. So there's ways maybe for you to find people where don't have to worry about breaking any sort of like income laws or like working laws, but you still get to create things with people in Germany and like, help each other. Like they could help your films and you could help theirs.
Right. Okay. I'll give you a call later today for me, but tomorrow for you. And
So
you
it's
can
just,
go follow
I
me.
have a live class from 10 a.m. usually goes till 11 a.m. for East Coast time.
No
So
problem.
that's the only time I'm not available tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good. I appreciate it, guys.
No problem.
All right, guys, we should really let Jeff go. Thank you everyone for coming and having the great questions. And I hope everybody learned a ton and had a good time. Bye,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you for having me, Angelo. And yeah, thank you, everyone. I hope
Thanks for everything, Jeff. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye, guys.